and welcome to episode 15 of The Smallest Thing. I'm Lisa Manterfield. Last week I mentioned I'd been tested for COVID-19, but I neglected to report that my test came back negative. I was happy to contribute to my county's statistics and help the effort to reopen. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like that will be happening anytime soon. Despite California's early efforts and my county's conservative approach, we are seeing a new surge in cases as businesses reopen. At the time of recording this episode, we are preparing ourselves for the possibility of a second stay-at-home order. It's going to be a long summer, but we need to stay strong and get through this for the health of ourselves, our loved ones, and our communities. This week, I want to share a fascinating tidbit of information I discovered recently about the survivors of the Eyam plague. But first, Emmott has some reckoning to do in this week's episode of The Smallest Thing. Welcome to the serialized audiobook, The Smallest Thing, written by Lisa Manterfield, read for you by Charlie Sanderson.
Chapter 15. Friday, August the 5th. There is nothing to do but wait. Wait to see how long this lasts. Wait to see who is next. Wait to see who will get out and who will not. Deb and I text to pass the time, but as the days pass and nothing changes, and as neither of us does anything worthy of sharing, our conversations dwindle. She isn't sick and Helena isn't any worse. Good news all around, but her dad won't let any of them leave the house, and that is very bad news for me. A reprieve comes when I get a summons to the village school to complete a contact tracing survey. What kind of survey? I ask, when Dad gives me the news. They're just trying to gather information to see who we've been around over the past several weeks. That could be hundreds of people. He nods. They seem to think it's a good idea, so we'll do as we're asked. I don't argue with him this time about acting like sheep. The chance to get out of the house, even for a while, is enough to make me obey. Plus, there's a chance I might see Aiden. That would be an excellent perk. Straight there and straight back, Dad says, as if he's reading my mind. It's been years since I've been inside the school where Deb and I first became friends, and I'm surprised by how small everything is. I walk through the hallway, looking at the paintings posted in galleries on the walls, remembering my creative teachers who understood how to make learning colourful and fun. As I pass the cloakroom, I try to remember which of the rows of hooks and cubbies was mine. I spot one with a picture of a lamb posted on one end, the corners turning up. I can't believe it's the same picture, stuck there for more than a decade. I'm shocked to see how low the hooks are. I can remember stretching up to hang my coat on a hook that would poke me in the chest now. The whole place makes me think about Alice. I miss her more than I could have imagined, and at the same time, I'm more relieved than ever that she isn't here. She texts periodically, always silly pictures of her having a good time, oblivious to what's happening at home. Yesterday, we got the news that a girl in her class had died. She was 8, barely tall enough to hang her coat, and now she's gone. Dad is trying to organise a memorial service for all the victims. He says it will help the rest of us get through it. It's a nice idea, but I don't know how any of us will ever get through this. Alice has all this to come back to. How will she ever make sense of it? Outside a classroom door, a being in a suit stands guard, his presence silencing my thoughts. As I approach and present my papers, I peer up into the face mask in hopes of finding a friendly face, or more specifically, of finding Aiden's friendly face. It's been days now since the one time we texted, and I hoped it would happen again, but I haven't heard from him. The sight of his familiar, smiling eyes would be reassuring. I want to know he's still here and hasn't been reassigned due to our fraternisation. Instead, the unfamiliar suit hands me back my papers and without a word ushers me into a classroom. The room immediately looks familiar, and the view across the playground jolts a memory. How many hours did I spend staring out of that window instead of paying attention to Mrs. Carmichael's lessons? A lot, as I recall. All the tables and plastic chairs have been stacked against one wall. Was I really ever able to fit in those tiny chairs? Seeing them makes me feel detached from my body. I've always been me inside this body, and I've always felt like me, so it feels odd to think of myself in a body I can no longer recall, as if the physical me and the spiritual me are on different journeys, always tethered, but by a long piece of elastic that stretches and contracts. Right now, it sags as the two parts of me reconnect in this odd memory from my childhood. Miss Siddle? A voice pulls me back into the present. In the middle of the classroom, booths have been set up like stalls at the summer fair. But instead of the hooker-duck and coconut shy, each houses a desk, computer, 2 chairs and a suited being. My being is female, and when I peer beyond the edges of her respirator, I recognise her as Aiden's boss, the woman who caught us together. She must recognise me too, but she doesn't mention it, and for obvious reasons, neither do I. My name's Jo. I will be doing your interview today. The official-looking name tag taped to her suit reminds me she's Dr. Joanne Reynolds. Unlike Aiden, she has not drawn a cheery cartoon interpretation of herself on her suit. Although she's friendly enough, it's clear she's the business end of things. Can I get you something to drink? She asks in a tone that suggests this is a formal offer, part of the routine, and not an invitation to get comfortable. I shake my head. Now that I'm here, my stomach is churning with nerves. My anxiety must show on my face because the skin around Dr. Reynolds' eyes crinkles into a reassuring smile. There's nothing to worry about. This isn't an interrogation. Our purpose is to collect contact data. We wish to monitor everyone who could have been in contact with the virus so that we can stop the spread. Her voice has the same tenor the school vaccination nurse used right before she stuck me with a giant needle. It's a monumental task, but we have a very powerful computer that uses modelling software to show us where we're most likely to see the virus pop up next. That way we can take preventative measures. Is this going to help stop it spreading in the village? I ask. The smile drops from Dr. Reynolds' eyes, which gives me my answer. But she responds anyway. I wish I could tell you we knew how to stop it, Emmott. Is it okay if I call you Emmott? I nod. We're looking at every facet imaginable. Local containment is first, of course, hence the quarantine. But we're also looking at preventing further spread, which might mean expanding the zone or creating other small local zones. Okay. I feel bad for Dr. Reynolds. It's an impossible job to come up with good news in a place where everyone knows there's none. So, she says, getting back to business. You can really help us by giving us as much information as you can, even if you think it's trivial and won't be any help. We've nicknamed our computer Sherlock because it notices even the most elementary details that we humans would think insignificant. If Dr. Reynolds is attempting to put me at ease, it's not working. Ever since I got my first phone, Mum's gone on about how I have to be sensible about what I post online. So the idea of old Sherlock gathering every scrap of data on me and making some brilliant deduction about my behaviour is frightening. All right, I say, deciding to play along. What juicy gossip can I give Mr. Sherlock? We start with the basics. Name, address, date of birth, doctor, parents, blah-de-blah. As I churn it all out, I can't help but think my brain could be put to better use than storing all this data. I've got almost 18 years' worth of useless information in there, all accessible for me to offer to Sherlock. Next, Dr. Reynolds hands me a list of people from the village. Dr. Spencer is at the top of the list, followed by Karen Cooper and the other people who have died. Below them is another set of names. Given that neither Dad or I are on the list, I'm guessing this is a list of everyone who's been infected so far. It's already several pages long, and it makes my stomach contract to think it's only going to get longer. OK, Dr. Reynolds says. What I'd like you to do is mark the level of contact you've had with each person on this list in the past 28 days. This will help us to ascertain how the virus is transmitted. We have 4 levels we're interested in: airborne, physical, biological, and sexual. My stomach gives a sharp clench. Even though the list is only for our village, it makes me think of my interactions with Ro and the fun times we had together, which ultimately reminds me of what a weasel he turned out to be and what an idiot I was to trust him. I think the levels largely speak for themselves, she continues. But just to clarify, level 1 is airborne. That means coming close enough to hold a normal conversation with someone, even if you didn't actually speak. If you got as close as we are now, even passing in the street, that's level 1. OK. I nod in understanding. Level 2 is physical, and that can mean any kind of physical interaction. Shaking hands, a pat on the back, a hug. It also includes unintentionally brushing against someone, even if your skin didn't touch. That's a bit trickier because you might not realise you touched someone, so I want you to really think about it. I don't have to think hard to recall Dr. Spencer pressing his stethoscope to my chest and back, or shaking my hand as I left and wishing me luck for the future. Ironic that my luck ran out around the same time as his future. I know I've hugged Deb since then, and Alice. If I'm one of those carriers that Aiden warned me about, there's a chance I could have passed it to them. I start to feel lightheaded. If Dr. Reynolds thinks this survey is nothing to worry about, then she's living on another planet. I take the pencil she's given me and fill in the bubble for level 2, next to Dr. Spencer's name. Level 3 is biological, and that includes a number of things. If you've been caring for someone where you might have come in contact with bodily fluids of any kind, mucus, feces, vomit, blood, saliva, that's level 3. So if someone sneezed on you or kissed you, even on the cheek, or if you kissed them, she says, lifting an eyebrow and giving me a conspiratorial smile, it's level 3. And level 4 speaks for itself, I think. She levels her gaze at me. I know this can be a bit embarrassing, and there might be things you'd rather nobody knew, but it's absolutely crucial you fill this in accurately. It could quite literally be a matter of life or death. I have nothing to hide, I say, even as the heat rushes to my cheeks. Dr. Reynolds is just doing her job, and I'm sure she's the bastion of privacy, but I'm glad the list only includes people from the village, so I don't have to confess the details of my personal life to Sherlock. Right then, she says, pushing up from the table. I'll leave you to it. I'm going to get myself a cuppa. Sure I can't tempt you? I think I could do with something a bit stronger than tea for the task at hand, but I'll take any comfort I can. I actually think I will, I say, and she disappears through the back curtain of the booth. I turn my attention to the card and scan the list of dead. It's numbing to think that all these people are no longer with us. But I can't allow myself to dwell on that now. The only way I'm going to get through this awful task is to treat it like a shopping list. If I think about the people attached to the list of names, I'll never be able to do it. I need to try to remember as much as I can, but so much has happened in the past weeks, it started to blur together. I've already marked Dr. Spencer, so I start back at the top, working my way name by name, trying to think of when I last came into contact with each person. Some I saw at Dr. Spencer's funeral, others in the post office or in the street. It's hard to remember which people I talked to and who I might have touched. But as I go down the list, I'm shocked to realise how many of the sick and dead I've been near. To realise how much we interact with others every day of our lives. I keep thinking too about Mum and Alice, and how I kissed them both before they left, and how much time I've spent with Dad, how many times we've bumped into one another in the kitchen. Dr. Reynolds slips back into the booth and slides a paper cup of tea and a paper plate of biscuits across the table to me. That's something else that's changed. Everything's become disposable, and there's no offering someone a proper cup of tea on your best china anymore. You can't trust that anything reusable has been properly cleaned. We had to turn in all our money because coins touch hand after hand. We've been told we'll get the same sum back in new money once the quarantine is lifted, but there are some in the village who think it's a swindle. I choose a biscuit and nibble one edge while I go through the horrible task of remembering every interaction with all my sick or dead neighbours. Dr. Reynolds keeps busy as I fill out my form, turning to the computer and keeping her eyes off my answers. When I'm done, she slips my paper into a folder without looking at it. I appreciate her discretion. "This next part's a bit trickier," she says. "Are you holding up okay?" "Fine." The tea and Vicky's have revived me, at least for the moment. Dr. Reynolds slides another form across the table. This one has 4 sections with blank lines underneath. The sections are labelled with the same 4 levels of contact. She pushes a small notepad and a pen across the table. "Now, I want you to think of all the places outside the village that you went in the week or so before the quarantine. Did you go into school, into town, to a friend's house, on the bus, to the gym? Try to think of absolutely everywhere you've been." She slides a calendar toward me, open to this month's picture of 4 puppies sitting in a hay wagon. "This might help jog your memory. You can use the notepad if you like. Then, for each level, I'd like you to list everyone you can remember being in contact with, whether that's people you met outside or people from outside who came into the village." I pull a face. I can barely remember what I had for breakfast this morning, let alone where I was 3 weeks ago. And to mark all the people I've been around, every tour I've taken, every interaction I've had, I could be sitting here for the rest of the week. I know it's a lot, but do the best you can. I'm going on my break in a few minutes, so I'll see if I can rustle up a sandwich for you. I don't want you fainting. I thank her. Even though what she's asking is a total pain, at least she knows it is, which counts for something. I set to work trying to remember everywhere I've been and all the people I've seen. I try not to focus on what it might mean if our virus has travelled elsewhere. At first, I'm glad I haven't been far and that my list isn't too long. My class has ended not long before the quarantine, so I've been catching up on sleep and milling about the village mainly, and working. My heart sinks as I think about all the tours I've taken in the past few weeks. Most of those contacts would be level 1, but how often did I grab an arm to steady someone or squeeze someone's hand as I accepted a tip? I don't even have their names, just a number of how many to expect in each party. If any of those people were infected, the implications don't bear thinking about. There's one more problem niggling in my mind, and that's Ro. I'm not ashamed to have a level 4 contact on my list. I'm 17. It's normal to have a boyfriend. In fact, I'd be more embarrassed if I didn't have someone to write down. I don't even care that the secret I've managed to keep could be out, but his name will stick out like a sore thumb, and given his recent turn of loyalty, I'd sooner forget we ever had those particular interactions. I go on with my list until I've exhausted my memory. My hand hovers over the level 3 box, tempting me to relegate Ro to a more chaste level. But I don't know who will see my answers. Will a faceless administrator feed the information into Sherlock, or will they check with Ro and know I've lied? It doesn't matter anymore anyway. It's all in the past, so I may as well tell the truth. I'm just about to scribble in Ro's name when the curtain swings back and a yellow suit appears, accompanied by a heavy whiff of bacon that jangles my taste buds to life. I look up, expecting Dr. Reynolds, but it's not her. It's Aiden. He steps toward me, and I'm reminded that the last time I saw him was in my imagination. My face colours. "Room service," he says, his eyes sparkling as he ambles over with a fantastic-looking bacon sandwich and a steaming cup of tea. I start salivating at the unfamiliar smell of real food, and when he sets the plate in front of me, it's all I can do not to cry. I'm about to dive in and devour it when I remember the list. I slide an elbow over it so Aiden can't see what I have or haven't written. What are you doing here? I'm unable to keep the mixture of glee and worry from my voice. He pushes the plate across the table. I heard you were under the microscope today. I lift the sandwich to my mouth and bite. My teeth cut through the grittiness of the bread to find the warm, greasy centre and the sharp tang of brown sauce. If there's a heaven, this is what it would be like. Did she say anything about the other night? I ask, lowering my voice. She acted like she didn't recognise me. Hard to imagine, he grins. Luckily, she didn't see you with this, or it might have been a bit trickier to explain. Aiden pushes a large plastic bag around to my side of the desk. Inside is my backpack. I thank whatever lucky stars shone on me that night and made me leave the backpack behind. And I thank the same lucky stars that Aiden was the one who found me. I don't know why he's so willing to stick his neck out for me, but right at this moment I am very grateful. Thank you, I tell him. I want to ask why he's protecting me, why he singled me out over everyone in the village, but a warm feeling snakes its way through me, giving me my answer. My face flushes as I realise that something has happened between us, something that we might never get the chance to do anything about. And you're sure I didn't get you into trouble? He shakes his head. But you will if you don't finish your survey. It's important. He turns away with the same level of discretion as Dr. Reynolds, but I don't turn back to my paper. Instead, I watch him moving papers around the desk and try to guess what he really looks like without the suit. He's average height, average build, average everything as far as I can tell, except for his eyes and his heart. It's both of those things that make him exceptional. When I turn back to my form, I know I have to write in Ro's name somewhere. Ro, who was always above average in so many ways until I needed him to be exceptional. Ro, who would have turned me in to save his own skin. Ro, who didn't keep my secret safe. It would be easy to get my revenge now. But that kind of pettiness was for the old world. There is no room for it now. People's lives are at stake here. Lots of people's lives. And every day I see what this virus can do if it isn't stopped. I could lie about my interaction with Ro to save face, but even after all he's done, I still care enough about him to try to save his life. I scribble Ro's name in the level 4 box and flip the list face down. All done. I return my attention to the sandwich and avoid eye contact with Aiden, not wanting him to see my humiliation. Looks like you have quite the appetite, he says. Colour rushes to my face. What? I ask without looking up. I can't believe he's reading my confidential survey. I've a good mind to report him for this. Looks like you were hungry. I glance up to see him nod toward my bacon sandwich. Oh! I glance down at what's left in my hands. 2 small pieces of bread stuck together with congealed grease. All evidence of the bacon devoured. I laugh, embarrassed. Apparently so. Aiden is gazing at me. He's not laughing. He's not even exactly smiling. But I know that look. It's become entirely too familiar to me. It's the look of someone who wants something they know is unreachable. And the thing I'm sensing he wants is me. If things were different, if everything were different, I think I might reach back.
Welcome back. The story of Eyam has been a bit of obscure history for a long time. Even in the UK, many people weren't familiar with the story of the plague village. Thanks to COVID, it's been in the news a lot. While digging into the history of the village, I came across this fascinating piece of information. About 20 years ago, researchers from the National Cancer Institute in Maryland analysed DNA samples from 100 residents of Eyam. The people were selected for the very reason M grumbles about it in Chapter 1 of The Smallest Thing. The fact that they had many traceable generations of ancestors who never left Eyam. In fact, all the people sampled could trace their lineage back to ancestors who lived in Eyam at the time of the plague. In other words, their ancestors survived the plague. Because of Eyam's decision to quarantine during the plague, it meant that almost everyone in the village would have been exposed to the disease. So the researchers wanted to know why certain people survived and others didn't. What they found was that a higher than average percentage of the villagers carried the genetic mutation known as Delta 32. It's now known that this mutation provides immunity to bubonic plague as well as HIV/AIDS. There is, of course, no way to prove that those who died did not carry the mutation, but the researchers concluded that those who survived the plague in Eyam did carry it and passed it along to their descendants. Even today, a higher than average percentage of the residents of Eyam carry the Delta 32 mutation. There's some discussion as to whether a similar connection exists between the Delta 32 mutation and COVID-19 immunity, but at this point it's purely speculation. There is still much we don't know about COVID-19, if some people have immunity, why some experience more serious symptoms than others, but I will be very interested to see what future research uncovers. One last thing. I've put together a super short survey about this podcast, asking you what you'd like to hear more of, as well as your opinions on the possibility of hearing future books in this format. It should take about 2 minutes to complete, and you can find the link in the show notes below. Your opinion will be very much appreciated. So until next week, stay safe and stay well. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Smallest Thing. To make sure you don't miss next week's episode, you can subscribe now on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and more. If you'd like to support the show, please leave a review and share this series with others you think might enjoy it. If you're on Instagram, tag me there at @LisaManterfield_, or follow me on Facebook at author Lisa Manterfield and Twitter at Lisa Manterfield. My newsletter subscribers are always the first to know about my news, events, upcoming releases, giveaways, and more. Sign up for monthly delivery at lisamanterfield.com/subscribe and get your complimentary copy of Love, Loss and Letting Go, 3 of my short stories. Thanks to Justin Joseph for producing and editing this show, and to Ketsa.uk for the music. That's all for this episode. Thanks for listening.